What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode review for ReZero Season 2. This is episode 14? Or technically?
Yeah, this is 14.
So with me, as always, I have Blue Spade.
So this immediately picks up where we left the first part of the season, where, of course, Otto confronts Subaru to stop, blaming himself or just stop shouldering his problems alone and stuff. So the episode just immediately starts off from that part, and it pretty much leads into a confrontation, which Otto just pretty much beats Subaru down. Subaru tries to fight him by tackling him, but Otto easily just swats off his attack.
Yeah.
And then of course starts lecturing him and how he's always blaming himself for all of his problems, and that he should rely more from help from other people. But of course Subaru states that every time he's asked other people for help, it only leads to more problems. And Otto tries to inquire as to why he thinks that, but of course Subaru has his reasons not to tell Otto the entire reason as to why, because it's for one, obviously it's complicated for one thing, and two, it would kill Otto if he did tell him the entire truth.
So we were saying before we started the review, this scene, it's kind of weird because the last episode ended with obviously the confrontation with Otto and Subaru, but it was very much shorter, but this time it's actually we see more or less the entirety of the scene play out. So this is actually more accurate to what happened in the light novel with Otto kind of beating Subaru down, because in the last episode he just I think he just punched him once, and then it seemed like that was the end of that, and then it kind of goes back in this episode and shows the entirety of it, I guess. But yeah, so this is actually more accurate to how the light novel was. But yeah, basically
go
ahead.
Yeah, I felt that the first 5 minutes of this episode should have been placed in the last 5 minutes of the last episode.
Yeah.
Because I mean, for one thing, the length of this episode was really long. It's 28 minutes long for this episode, uninterrupted. With no opening and no ending song. However, I do want to point out that the ending song for this season, well, for this part of the season, is the exact same one from the last.
I was kind of surprised by that.
Well, maybe they'll put in a new opening and.
I know they will put in a new opening, but I don't know about.
Yeah.
I'm guessing they should put in a new ending, but.
Yeah. I mean, but in my opinion, I really felt it was weird that they didn't put the first 5 minutes of this episode into the last one, because I felt the way they ended off the last episode a few months ago felt kind of abrupt and out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And this could have at least resolved some of it, and maybe at least put more hype into this second part of the season. I mean, people are already hyped up to begin with, but still, it would have made more sense storyline wise had they put that in there.
Well, I mean, we still more or less get the same result, because the point of that scene was to show that Otto wanted to actually actually help Subaru, and that Subaru should rely on him more for assistance, basically.
Yeah, and soon afterwards, of course, Subaru comes back to his senses, and then of course, Subaru, tells him what his plans are and what he should, what his next steps are. So the next thing he does is he goes back to the cabin and confronts Roswaal again, and he makes him a bet, saying that that he of course one of those conditions is that Subaru is going to help Emilia become the ruler of the kingdom, and then of course Roswaal is going to be there to help him out on that.
Basically.
And of course, mentioning that he will, free the people of the sanctuary and stop the attack on the mansion at the same time. And of course, Roswaal is a bit skeptical on that idea, because he thinks it's impossible. He thinks it's impossible for Subaru to do something like that. Of course, we've seen Subaru go through impossible odds before, so Subaru might come up with something to successfully concoct something to stop both of them at once. but yeah, so eventually, like, like I said, Roswaal is skeptical, but he eventually, like, eventually agrees with Subaru's plan, and his bet that Subaru will succeed in his mission to, stop both attacks and complete both objectives and help Amelia ascend to the throne.
Yeah, and before this, Roswaal had already kind of resigned himself that this was going to be like a failed loop. So he's kind of surprised when he sees Subaru just kind of burst in and make that bet. But yeah, before Subaru leaves too, like Roswaal actually gives him a heads up and says that the attack on the mansion is going to happen in 3 days, and I think he also said like there is going to be 3 days until the sanctuary is covered in snow.
Yeah, I mean it's eventually going to happen, but what Subaru wants to do is like try to stop both things all at once altogether. So so that's pretty much where the first 5 minutes ends, and it was a good introduction back into the show, and I think the next thing he does, Subaru does, is he goes to meet with I forgot her name. It's
Ryuzu. He goes to the replication facility, or where the crystal is, and that's where he meets Ryuzu, or one of the Ryuzu clones. And basically, like, he pretty much just tells her like, hey, I already know everything about the Ryuzu clones, and also like Garfield's circumstances.
Yeah, and of course why Frederica left the sanctuary in the first place, and then why Garfield is reluctant to even get out of the sanctuary is because of his family history. Because like they say, he blames his mother because of I don't know, maybe for abandonment issues or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. So, and then I think I forgot what else they
Ryuzu reveals about, basically that because Subaru says that she's against the liberation of the sanctuary, which she says is not true, and she wasn't sure where he got that assumption. But Subaru says that like, but she comes to the conclusion that it must be one of the other Ryuzu clones, and the Ryuzu clones, if we remember, like, have different names. Like, because one of the other Ryuzu clones Subaru talked to was Ryuzu Bilma, and this Ryuzu he's talking to was Ryuzu Garma, or I forget what her name was, but
I forgot the last name.
But basically, the Ryuzu clone that's with Garfield is Ryuzu Shima, and Ryuzu Shima, she said, was basically like a sort of like a rogue Ryuzu clone or something, and she doesn't really do this, doesn't really follow along with the other clones, and she's kind of ran away and just is like staying with Garfield, I guess. So yeah, she's not really technically like part of with the other clones, I guess you would say. Yeah.
And of course, soon afterwards, he meets up with Amelia again. This time, of course, like, Amelia is still, I guess, traumatized after having to go through another trial. So Subaru like goes back in to comfort her, and this time he asks like what Amelia actually saw in the trial, just so he can have an idea on how to help her out a bit more. So now one thing I need to point out, I would highly recommend people watch what was it, the Frozen Bond OVA that was released, I think that was like early last year, which details like Amelia's past with Puck, and how she got into that situation. I remembered I did point out in that review we did like almost a year ago that there were some things that were cut in that OVA, particularly like how Amelia met Roswaal, and of course like she mentions that like there's a deal that she made with Roswaal that if she helps it, well, if she's the one who ascends to the throne, then Roswaal will help her and her family in the village that she used to live in, like free from their frozen prison. So I guess that one scene that I guess that was
that was one of the things that was cut from the Frozen Bond, right? Where like she meets up with Roswaal. I think I remember that.
Well, the scene we saw in this episode was like a quick flashback scene. You know, like I'm guessing that should have been in the OVA in the first
That's what
place.
I was thinking.
I mean, it was just
obviously like she does go over this in the novel, but like here we actually see they actually do flashback scenes to to those points. But yeah, like it kind of fills in some of the gaps, I guess you would say, from the Frozen Bond OVA.
I guess they have their reasons as to why they didn't put it on there. Just because if they would have put that scene in there, it would have spoiled maybe some plot points, for this particular season.
Yeah, because she also mentions about her being frozen in ice too.
And of course, like Puck was the one who freed her in the first place. However, like she does have like the rest of her family still trapped in a frozen prison, in a similar situation as she was, but she has no way to free them. So now like she's having to rely on Roswaal to help her out on that. However, she is feeling some regret as to accepting that deal because she feels like she points out that every other candidate like has their own like reason as to why they want to ascend to the throne, but she admits to herself that her reasons to want to ascend to the throne are more selfish than others.
Yeah, because that's pretty much why she wants to become the ruler, is so she can free her family.
Yeah, so I guess like this is not something that she really even asked for in the first place, but it's something like that that she feels like she needs to do for her own personal reasons. So that's probably why she's having to. Well, she's frequently failing on the trials over and over again, and which drove her mad. In the end, at one of the loops.
Yeah, not necessarily. The reason is because as we will see in this episode, is because her memories were sealed.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah. I guess like the reason as to why her memories are sealed is because of Puck sealing them. Yeah. And of course, like she eventually, well, the more she talks to Subaru, like about this, like she eventually starts to, well, she almost goes into another panic attack, but then of course Subaru then calms her down, and then she eventually falls back to sleep. And then shortly afterwards, like he tries to find a way to try to bring Puck back. So he tries this one way in attempting to strangle Amelia, so that that pretty much prompts Puck to initiate, like, go into self-defense mode and just like freeze his hands a bit, but thankfully not enough to to freeze him enough to shatter him or something like that. Yeah, so like Puck finally makes his appearance again after all this time, and of course Subaru of course like asks Puck for a favor, which is of course to unseal like Amelia's memories. However, like of course this gets us into the next scene in which Amelia wakes up and then she finally sees Puck again. Well, of course, not in
yeah. I don't know if they mentioned this in the anime, but at least in the light novel, they said that the reason why Puck disappeared was something to do with him like violating the pact, but he doesn't elaborate on that. So yeah, that's basically why he wasn't. Apparently, like why he didn't show up. Yeah. And of course he tells Amelia kind of tells Amelia all this, but he doesn't really get tell the entire story because his time was limited at that point. Yeah, he's also smaller. Like for some reason he's not as big.
And of course he does fulfill the promise to break the seal on her memories. However, like this Puck eventually ends up disappearing shortly afterwards in doing so. Well, of course this was kind of his intention in do so in the first place, because he wanted to break the pact between her and himself. Yeah.
So do you think Puck might be permanently gone, or do you think he could potentially come back? Because I feel like he might show up again.
I feel like he might come back at some point. I don't think this is like I don't think like Puck is dead in any way. I think there's a way for them to, for Puck to meet up with the others again. I just don't know how or when. It's just, I mean, people are still asking when the hell is Rem gonna wake up in, in the light novel.
Well,
haven't gotten that.
Yeah, unfortunately, not anytime soon, from what I've heard. Yeah.
But that's. Well, I guess that's a story for another time. So, but yeah. So like, Puck ends up disappearing, and then like, Emilia's memories start flooding back in, of course. And of course, this this still doesn't make her any better, but of course, it gives us a little. It's going to start giving us more clarity of what happened to her in the past. Yeah,
like we start seeing some of these flashbacks with what looks like a young Emilia, like in the snow, and like we see a woman run up to her and like shout her name, and the woman is also, I think, a half elf like her, but of course. Well, we actually do get, so it's not a spoiler. She actually does say what her name is. It's Fortuna.
Yeah, and of course, well, yeah, Fortuna, which is like, I'm pretty sure that's her mother, because that's assuming that's.
Yeah.
Well, no. I mean, like, Emilia talked to Subaru saying that she did have parents, but then she met someone else who became her foster mother.
Yeah, it's not a real mother. I think.
Yeah.
Not too much of a spoiler. It's more like she's her aunt. She's not her mother.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, well, they didn't say anything, in this episode, but of course, like, yeah, they didn't clarify, but it does show, like, we do get like a little bit more flashbacks of her and Fortuna. Of course, like I said before, like, this doesn't make Emilia feel any better about it, but of course, this is one of the reasons what Subaru wanted Emilia to have to, to confront her past, and then to eventually like pass the trials in the end. And then I think soon afterwards, like this, with Emilia having to see more and more of her memories come back, she eventually like runs away, disappears later on in the night, which leads to like most of the people in the sanctuary trying to look for her, including
like the main reason she ran away was because she was upset that Subaru didn't keep his promise to stay by her side, because she wanted Subaru to like stay there holding her hand. And then when she wakes up, she realizes, like, of course, I guess it's like also Subaru leaving her, and also Puck left her, and it also, now that she recovered the memory of Fortuna, like, she'd feel like she was also abandoned by her too. So that, I guess that kind of culminated in her like getting upset and like running off, and leaving.
Yeah, and of course, like I said, this leads to many people in the sanctuary trying to look for her, and of course Garfield tries to look for her as well, but he also tries to look for one of the Ryuzus, I guess. And like all he finds is like, of course, an empty cabin with 2 teacups, and then of course he can't find them. And I think it was Rom who told Garfield.
Rom told Garfield like that Emilia was. They couldn't find Emilia.
And then he goes to I guess one of the what was it? One of the places where was housing the crystalled up.
I think it's Ryuzu. Technically it's called like the Ryuzu replication facility or something. That's where the Ryuzu and the crystal is. He goes there looking for her.
And of course, the only person he ends up finding there is, of course, Otto, who's, of course, like under request by Subaru to talk to Garfield about what his next plans are. But the scene pretty much ends there, and then we finally transition back into the what was it?
The tomb,
into the temple of the tomb, and then like we see Emilia just like slouched by a wall, and of course we finally see Subaru coming up to her, and that's where the episode ends.
I'm not sure how I felt about this, because in the light novel you're not really sure what's going on, like because obviously like Otto still confronts Garfield, but it's the whole scene with him basically sort of like fighting Garfield plays out, which is a pretty lengthy scene, and that's that all plays out, and then that's when we eventually learn that this was kind of part of Subaru's plan. because we're not sure if Subaru, like, obviously we know he had Otto go and confront Garfield, but there's a bit more to it than that, and we kind of learn about that before we see Subaru again. So it's there's a bit more, like, you're kind of wondering what's going on, and then I guess in this episode they just decided to go ahead and, like, just in between what's going on with Garfield and Otto, like, showing, you know, that Subaru found Amelia. It's not a huge change, but I thought it was kind of interesting they did that. Yeah, that's pretty much how the end of the episode where, like, Subaru finds Amelia again.
I mean, like, I'm curious to, like, how they're going to start off the next episode, if it's going to go back to the Otto confrontation, or if it's going to go back to the Amelia and Subaru scene.
I'm not exactly sure. Like, the whole episode could either just be the confrontation with Otto and Garfield, or it could, like, cut in between that and the Subaru, the conversation that Subaru has with Amelia, or just, like I said, the whole episode could just be the Garfield and Otto fight, or it could just, you know, could just be that, and then the next episode after that could be, like, Subaru having having that conversation with Amelia. But yeah, I'm not exactly sure. But I thought this was actually a really good episode. It's a pretty good way to start off the second half of the season. I was a little bit disappointed we didn't get the new opening, but I guess, you know, we'll have to wait for the next episode for that.
I mean, how often have we,
ReZero is pretty much known for almost... Opening? It seems like, like, almost never, like, actually having the openings in there.
Yeah, it's like they only maybe show it, like, maybe once or twice, you know, for a season, and then, you know, they just follow up and, like, just show the story. Don't show any. I mean,
I think that's a good thing, considering there is a lot of content they have to cover, so it makes sense. Especially in this arc, for instance, like, so where they're at now is, like, volume 13 of the light novel, and they have the rest of that to cover, and then they have another volume 14, the entirety of that, and then they, I guess, have the beginning of volume 15, which I guess is technically, like, the end of arc 4, and then it goes into arc 5. So yeah, they still have a ways to go.
I personally, I thought this was, like, a good opener to, you know, the second part. I mean, we've had to wait for a long time for this. I mean, technically, this should have been done, like, late last year, had it not been for the pandemic hitting us. But I'm glad we got it back. It's just, like, it's a good way to start off the new year with all the brand new animes we're going to be watching this year. I mean, quite a few. God, like, we got, like, four different animes we're having to review, and, like, there's so many other stuff, but we can only get up to 4 different shows we could try to review all this week. But yeah, I did enjoy it. It's a good way to start off the second part. Hopefully we'll see what's going to happen in the next part, if they're going to actually transition to Amelia focusing on her trials.
It might be a little bit more focused on Otto, because I do know that we're going to get more backstory with Otto. Because, you know, we still don't really know too much about him, but they're going to kind of go a little bit into his past. You know, so, but not too much, but they'll show, like, some of his backstory. But yeah, like I said, I thought this was a pretty good episode. You know, not too much crazy stuff really happened. Like, I would say that the craziest thing, obviously, is, of course, Puck disappearing and Amelia's memories becoming unsealed. Like, I think that's definitely going to lead to some interesting character development for Amelia as well, now that she remembers a lot of what happened before she was frozen in the crystal.
Yeah, and you know, like I said before, I really feel like people should watch the Frozen Bond OVA first before watching this episode, because I really do feel that, you know, that storyline does fit into this next part of the storyline. Yeah, I mean, it does definitely give a little bit more context for certain things. But yeah, there's also, of course, everything that happened before she was frozen in the crystal, which is pretty interesting as well, I will say, having read ahead. So yeah, but yeah, like I said, I don't really have too much else to say about this episode in particular. I'm definitely looking forward to the rest of the season. I think this is, like, the first part was pretty crazy. The first part of this arc was pretty crazy, but the second half also has a lot of interesting stuff, I'll just say. There are some characters who show up that we might have seen before.
just maybe in a different form. I won't say any more than that, but yeah, there's some interesting revelations that happen in the second half.
But yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it. I think this is like a good start to the second part of the season. Yeah, so like I'm pretty sure this is like another 13 episodes for. No, they said no. Actually, no. I'm looking at the episode count. They said there's 14 episodes this part of the season.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense because like I said, there is a lot of stuff. They still have to cover. So
yeah. Yeah, and so hopefully we'll get to see what's going to happen next, and hopefully I remembered you linked me like I think the opening song of this before we started. I think it was called I forgot what it was called. It was heck, I even forgot I found it. It's the opening theme supposedly is called Long Shot by Mayu Mishima.
Apparently she's an ex-Smith and Royd singer, which is the band that did the other openings for ReZero. I didn't even know they replaced the singer for that band, to be honest, so that's kind of interesting.
I'm definitely interested in on what the opening's
I'm kind of wondering what it's going to look like, because I mean, from the sound of it, it sounds very high energy, and like I kind of wonder what's going to happen there. I kind of hope they don't spoil too much, though, because there is, I don't know, I feel like there's quite a bit they could potentially spoil, so hopefully they kind of hold back on some of that. But so I don't really have anything else to say about this episode in particular. I don't know if you have anything else to add.
Oh, it's actually, it's finally good to see the show once again after a long wait.
Yeah, this is definitely one of my most anticipated anime. Of the season when it aired, and this season as well. Because I can't wait to see some of the stuff I read about animated. So, that all being said, I guess until next Wednesday, we will see you all next time.